Now, COVID-19 has changed how students are educated around the globe. With the ongoing spread of the virus, technology and online learning platforms have become increasingly essential when adapting to this new norm. Universities have quickly evolved their digital tools and platforms to ensure uninterrupted educational delivery to their isolated students. For more on this discussion, we're joined via Skype by Mr. Raees Khan, an education expert and executive director at the Cintolox strategic consultants. Mr. Khan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with the brief by the minister today. We heard there the announcement, for example, that NSFAS students will receive or continue to receive their stipends, and the data issue, the data packages for the next 3 months. We harp on this. One could say, why are we still going there? But it is an important aspect of education. Some varsities have been online, while some students who don't have laptops or data have been left behind.
Yes, certainly. And there's a lot that needs to be learned. If I'm going to sit here and tell you I've got all the answers, I absolutely would be lying. And the education spectrum in itself has a long way to learn in terms of the lag. However, educational institutions that have been engaging in remote learning or distance learning, online learning, are more accustomed or au fait with the nature of the practices. And definitely devices remain a challenge, data remains a challenge, and it's not even sufficient to say that giving students data and devices are going to suffice, because the learning environments in which learners are challenged by poses an imminent threat to the learning circumstances in itself, to the success of any remote learning intervention.
Universities worldwide have embraced remote learning, and in some countries, especially like South Africa, the digital divide is obviously very exposed, and the gaps in new way of learning that is. Let's start by understanding how South African students can effectively benefit from remote learning.
Well, remote learning has a wide array of benefits. So one of that is that in terms of where education is going, it accommodates for users. I mean, research shows that, number one, students today are significantly different to those of the past. They have significantly different expectations and have different demands for learning. So therefore, the research also states that students prefer more interactive, video-based, user-based, autonomous learning materials. And I think the shift towards remote learning enables the responsiveness to this type of student or learner demands, and also supports the capacity building for the skills of future.
And contact teaching, that's something important as well. I mean, my kids, for example, although not higher learning at varsity yet, we get updates, teachers send in videos, teachers send in material, but the reality is at home, some of us are not educators. We sit there with this material and we're not sure what to do with it. And the school would say, but we've been sending you this. It also depends how it's accepted from the person, or received rather, from the person on the other side.
No, of course. And in relation to the videos itself, research tells us quite clearly and predominantly that the majority of these videos have adverse consequences. They produce learning results or outcomes that are counterproductive and do not meet the minimum pedagogical educational requirements. And therefore, it's very important that we need to employ educational best practices in the type of artifacts that we as educational practitioners are disseminating. Because if we are not cautious with this, it can do more educational harm than good.
Now, the dominant model of education in time of COVID-19 is digital content delivery. Help us understand how this model in particular addresses the quality of learning globally, if it were, as it were.
So when it comes to digital content delivery, we need to take our focus off content delivery, but enablement of multimodal elements of learning. Because when we speak about digital content delivery, and we find quite commonly, and a practice that's quite imminent at this moment in most institutions, is the concept of content dumping, just trying to get as much content onto an online session where we have 45-minute or an hour-long Zoom calls or
Seems that we've dropped the line there. Apologies there, the Skype line for Mr. Raees Khan. Important conversation we're having there, in particular with online learning, as we heard with the SASCO interview we had a short while ago, where they're saying that they find it a bit difficult to get the, well, besides the fact that even if you give the data and laptops to students, at the end of the day, some do need contact learning, some do need that interaction with the lecturers or other students, as it were. It seems that we've got Raees back. Raees, we lost you there for a second. I know you're back now. You were saying in particular with the model of education in terms of under COVID-19, the digital space, as it were.
Yes, so the digital space poses quite a challenge, but so educational practitioners need to be particularly careful in the type of content they deliver and disseminate, because when we speak about remote learning or online learning or blended learning forums, these require a particular design, and it touches on the concept of learning design. And it's a very high level of expertise that goes into the intentional planning of it. And if you are not intentional in your planning and delivery of your packaging of education in this manner, it can have adverse effects.
Now, in certain cases, and we've seen this, we've seen some students saying, look, I'm going to do online learning, I'm prepared for it, I've got it, but somehow they feel, look, it's not good enough, I'm more prepared, I'm more comfortable with contact learning. Now, what do they do? Do they drop out? We've heard of students saying, I'd rather cancel the 2020 academic year because I find this tough in as far as learning online.
So students that are particularly feeling challenged to that extent should, number one, voice their concerns as loud as possible to the institutions, and institutions and governments alike have an obligation to identify these students as a top priority. But nevertheless, in the other breath, students should also, where possible, appreciate this opportunity to engage in self-directed learning, to share knowledge and resources and support each other through communities of practice, study groups, etc. And also leverage that this is how we will be expected to be working in the future. These are skills that we are developing right now that's developing the future or shaping the future of work, which is by nature interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and some of those concepts come to fore that we need to become accustomed with learning and working proficiently and collaborating online as Industry 4.0 skills.
In fact, that was where I was going to go with this, your insights, if you may, with regards to that. I mean, everything is online these days, and that's the future, so to speak. We speak about the fourth industrial revolution. We've got 5G coming around the corner. Higher learning, or any form of learning, or any form of information is basically online, and it's something that we're going to have to get used to. Education, as it were, will no longer be in the classroom. People don't watch television as much now. Everything is online.
No, of course, and I mean, higher education and education in its essence is revolutionized forever going forward, and it gives us the opportunity to firstly improve infrastructure and also from a professional perspective bridge the gaps between higher education expectations or higher education products and industry expectations. We are able to improve the quality of education and address Industry 4.0 skill sets such as creative thinking, collaboration, content creation, critical thinking more robustly than we otherwise would have. I mean, the education space is now one that is revolutionized as a cornerstone or a keystone of what perpetuates in society and vice versa. And we should now model greater practices that enable educational flexibility. I mean, for the first time ever, we are going to see a course where you can take art and science as a major, or accounting and music as one course. And these are some of the possibilities by the new models of education.
Raees Khan, education's expert, executive director at Cintolox strategic consultants. Thank you very much indeed for joining us via Skype, speaking to us about, well, the digital platform as we're learning online. Increasingly, South Africa, in fact, world over, has had to adapt due to COVID-19.